Good morning, Angela, and welcome to the Local Paleo Show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Good morning, Mark. How's everybody?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. I trust you two are wonderfully well as well.
We are. Thank you.
I am. So, Angela, you're the CEO and founder of Tribali Foods, and you offer a line of high-quality meat patties.
That's right.
Regarding your background, I already know you follow the paleo diet. Can you tell us how you became paleo? And then we'll talk about your products.
Sure, certainly. My health journey and food journey has been one of what I call from paleo to confusion and then back again. So I grew up in Greece. I was born there. I lived there until I was about 6 years old and spent subsequently every summer in Greece. And when I say every summer, it's pretty much 3 months out of the year. And during that time, we had a beach house that was by a little fishing port village. And my grandmother would send me into the village to pretty much purchase from all the vendors what we were going to eat that day. And it was just such a lovely experience and just brought me back to just ancestral eating and real food. And so I would just make my stops along the way to the local fishermen that caught the fish that morning, to the farmers market and vegetables that were picked that day, to even the bakery, which was my favorite, right? And there's the bread back then was just so pure and just made with such clean ingredients. And the funny thing is I would finish half the loaf before I'd even get back to the house. But we would lay everything on the kitchen table and Grandma would look at what I brought, take inventory, and decide what she would make for us that day. So there were no cookbooks. There was no packaged or processed food. It was just what we found that day in the local market. And I loved eating that way. And it served me well. I was, a young kid growing up. I had 2 younger brothers. And every time we would go to Greece, we would come back just feeling so energized and alive and healthy and just free of any tummy trouble or acne or all the issues that we would have when we would come back home. And here, my dad in Pasadena had restaurant business, and he had a fast food hamburger business of all things. So, even though we would cook healthfully at home, there were lots of times that we would eat hamburger, fries, and shakes and fast food. And it was, although it was a great business, it wasn't the most healthy, nutritional type of diet. So I just thought that, gosh, when I would go back to Greece, I would thrive. I would feel good emotionally, physically, mentally on that kind of food. And then I went through my teenage years and even in college and did the whole experimental process with low-fat this and how many calories. I would look at the ingredients and all I cared about was how many calories were on the back of the box. Had I known then what I know now, it would have been a complete different journey. And then I got into athleticism. So I was a marathon runner. I was a cyclist. I did CrossFit. I lifted weights. And it was always about fine-tuning body composition and what I wanted to accomplish, I would eat accordingly. So, I got into macro counting and calorie counting and all that confusion. And it took me about 30 years, really. I also became a vegetarian at the time. So to top it off, I only ate fish and eggs, so no meat whatsoever. So a few years ago, I studied nutrition at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York and came to realize that the best way to fuel my body and what makes me feel the best is high quality protein. And if I can find that and source that and cook it in a way that it brings the nutritional benefits and makes me feel good, then I'm going to give it a try. So 2 years ago, I tried my first piece of grass-fed and finished beef, and I haven't looked back since.
Right. So, what age did you start shopping, and how did your grandma teach you? I mean, she let you go to the shop without supervision. Obviously, she trusted you. What did she teach you?
Yeah, it was such a small village and everyone knew each other. So everyone knew everyone. I mean, you can imagine what it's like, you having, from Europe as well. And she
I'm familiar with it, but I want to hear your side of the story.
Right, and you could visualize it. So everyone knew us, everyone knew everyone. And I was young. I think I was about 8 or 9, going into the village and getting the eggs, the fresh eggs, the bakery, the butcher knew us. So again, it was anything that was fresh that day, I would come home with. She'd give me a little list and say, don't forget tomatoes or potatoes or zucchini. So I had my small list, but it was all about what they were selling that day. We just sort of cooked from the real ingredients. And that's just such a fond memory. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience. And that's why I mentioned that, it was from paleo to confusion and then back again. It's like, I want to go back to the roots of how I ate when I was younger, from real ingredients, from things that were either gathered, grown, or plucked that day. It's just such a wonderful way to eat.
When we grow up in that environment, we are not aware, we don't realize that it is good and it is different. I grew up on my grandparents' small farm, and my grandmother grew most of the food by herself in a small garden. There was no pesticides, no nothing like this, And basically, she sent me to the garden, pick a few of these, a few tomatoes, or pick a salad or something, bring it back. Because it was a small farm, she had only chicken and rabbits, so we had eggs. And then for meat, she would go to the market and trade. She would trade the chicken for a pound of meat or something like this. So
I love
meat was a special meal, like it was rare, very expensive for a small farmer, So I'm aware, and then it took me years to realize the same thing, which is, wow, I didn't know at the time, but that was the best way to eat. Everything fresh, everything, barely out of the garden.
Tomato. Yeah. I distinctly remember the smell of a tomato. Picked right out of the garden. I mean, that smell still, resides in my memory, as opposed to when you go to the market now and you grab a tomato, it doesn't smell like anything. I mean, there's nothing there.
That's right.
There's a difference.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I still have a very vivid memory of picking fresh strawberries from a friend's garden and serving them with whipped cream, just still warm from the sun, and that's just a pleasure that is rare these days. It's rare these days, The smell, the taste, everything. So from that discovery of protein, animal protein, how did you come up with the idea of doing your own patties?
Right. So that was a combination of a few things, but I pretty much bought a refurbished meat grinder on Amazon, and I had a white Lab, and I would source either wild-caught seafood, because I'm a huge fish lover, pastured pork, grass-fed beef, and I would put it through the grinder, and then I would grab whatever I had in my pantry and my fridge, either vegetables, herbs, spices, and purees, and then grind the meat and mix all these things into them to make what we call in Greece is actually more of an oval shaped, and it's called a bifteki, which you might be familiar with. But so it depends what part of Greece you are. They use different kinds of meats, either it's lamb or pork or beef, and then they put different spices and herbs in it, depending if you're in the northern part of Greece or the southern or on an island. But they're all very flavored, just meat patties. And again, they're more of an oval shape. So I was making these at home, being now that I was eating, and freezing them, because for me, I have 3 little kids. So part of what I do in my meal prep is making things convenient for me. So there's times where I haven't thought of what we're cooking tonight, and it's nice to just open that freezer and grab frozen patties. And being that we grew up in the burger business, my kids are just so, burger lovers. They love the burger patty. And part of what I made is just so flavorful with herbs, spices, vegetables, and purees that they're meant to stand alone and eaten paleo style. I mean, you can definitely put them in a bun and eat them like a hamburger. They are a patty after all, and my kids do eat them in a bun. But they're meant to stand alone too, because they are the protein source of your plate. So that's pretty much how the idea came about.
Right, and just add some vegetables or salad on the side and you're good to go, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, I have a very, I studied nutrition, as I mentioned as well, and I have a very simple philosophy as to how I'd like to build my plate and how I encourage some of my clients to look at their plate. It's just protein plus produce plus healthy fats. And if you can stick to that formula, it really, I mean, you can have thousands of combinations, but it's just P plus P plus HF, healthy fats. It's pretty simple.
Sounds good. So about the patties, you currently offer 3 different flavors. Can you tell us what they are and what they contain?
Certainly. So the Mediterranean, of course, was the first combination. And that one, I will just show it to you. I happen to have it right here. It's the Mediterranean patty. And as you can see, again, we featured it a little more paleo style with some grilled vegetables and artichokes. And that one has various notes of Mediterranean seasoning. So there's mint and garlic puree and a little tomato paste and some fire roasted onions and some rosemary and a Mediterranean proprietary spice blend that we came up with. And then we also have the umami, and I love them all. It's like asking me which one of my 3 children is my favorite, and I can't pick. But I am just partial to this one because I love mushrooms. And mushrooms give it a little bit of a different texture. And then there's a little bit red boat fish sauce in here and some nori seaweed flakes. And this umami flavor, red boat fish sauce, people were like, you're putting fish sauce in your meat? That just sounds so bizarre. But actually, it elevates the beef to a whole different dimension. So it's just a flavor, a burst of flavor. You've tried it, right?
Yeah, that's also my favorite. And the Mediterranean is second favorite.
Right. And then we also have the Chipotle Chicken, which has poblano salsa, a little bit of Chipotle spices, again, roasted onion and garlic. And this one has a very mild Chipotle spice flavor. So I just, again, being that I have 3 kids, I wanted to make sure that they were all kid friendly because this is my go-to meal for them. Easy, convenient, and effortless. So I wanted to make sure that their little taste buds liked and were able to eat all of these.
Yeah. They're going to go strong and grow strong and healthy. So I'm curious about your ingredients. How do you source your ingredients? And can you tell us more about the quality of them?
Sure, certainly. So part of the ingredient list, I had a criteria before I made these. And that was that all 3 of my children were able to read the ingredient list, pronounce the words, and be familiar with what they are and be able to find them in our kitchen. I mean, we went on a hunt. I said, can you find garlic? Can you find tomato paste? Can you have the fine mint? And if you can say the ingredients, pronounce them, identify them, and find them, then they are going in this package. So that was sort of my criteria as to how I'm going to make them. I didn't want any fillers, any binders, any additives, any preservatives, or nothing that's, like I said, unpronounceable by an 8-year-old. Secondly, we wanted to source our meats, which is the largest component, from farmers, local farmers. And being that we came from a family business too, I just love supporting small family farms. It's just so important to me because so much of our community supported our business, and I see the power of small businesses. Once you're in the community being supported, you just grow that way. So I found a family farm up in Humboldt. I visited them. I saw their practices. I wanted to know their standards and how they raised and slaughtered the animals. And I just wanted to make sure that they met our standards of transparency, 100% grass-fed and finished. And most consumers do know and are familiar with grass-fed on a package, but realize if it just says grass-fed, it doesn't mean the animal was finished on grass. So grass-fed on a box can mean the same thing as conventional, quite frankly. I mean, you're familiar with that, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it was important for me to just see the practice and be on that farm and see that the animal started its life and ended its life on grass. And of course, organic, same with the poultry. And then as far as the other spices and herbs and vegetables, we looked high and low to different vendors across the US and wanted to make sure that what they were delivering was non-GMO, of course, and no hidden natural flavors or hidden ingredients that aren't just pure what it says. If it's garlic puree, then it is garlic puree.
So you already mentioned non-GMO. What other non-something your products have?
So, well, they are gluten-free because we didn't
Yes.
put any binders or fillers. And, you know, what you'll find in a lot of other types of patties or sausages are a lot of fillers to either preserve their shelf life or actually, you know, just fill up the ingredients. So there's no gluten, there's no dairy. I mean, you know, why would you put dairy in a meat product? No soy.
Right.
And, you know, they're just highly nutrient dense with the highest grade animal protein. And then, of course, the vegetables, herbs, spices, and purees that are just all the purest ingredients.
Right. And we should probably add that they're also Paleo certified and Whole30 approved.
Of course. And, you know, those are just two added benefits. It just so happened that I'm immersed in the paleo community and I've done a Whole30 multiple times. I'm actually doing the September challenge right now. And when I approached both those certifying and approval agencies, they instantly just looked at my ingredients and said, you know, slam dunk. This is, you're right on with what's in the, on the back label.
Good. Now that recently there's seems to be an interest in keto diet as your product qualifies for keto diet, right?
It does. And that's interesting you say that. And me being a nutritionist, like I mentioned, there's so many people that are still stuck on looking on that back package and looking at the calories and the fat. And not wanting it to be high in fat. And I'm trying to just, you know, re-educate people saying, actually, the fat from grass-fed and finished beef, the CLAs, the vitamin A and the K, these are things that are good fats and good vitamins and minerals. So don't be afraid of a little bit more fat in these products. And being that they are natural carb, because the vegetables are just such a minute, you know, seasoning and minute ingredient amount, they definitely qualify for keto as well. Right.
I just had an argument with a friend of mine, good friend of mine. He's borderline diabetic, and so he's been put on the diet, and the diet that the dietitian recommend for him is a vegetarian diet. And now on the good side, they say no carbs, so that's good, but they say no fat. And I could not convince him. I say, you need to get good quality fat. Fat does not make you fat. And he'll just say, no, you know. And as I remind him, you remember I'm a nutritionist, right? Because he knows me as a chef, because we're both chefs. And I know, but I'll listen to my dietitian. And so I could not convince him that we're way beyond the whole concept that fat is bad for you. Bad fat is bad, but good fat's good.
Right, and if he's doing no carbs and no fat, where is he getting, I mean, his energy from? The protein?
Precisely.
You know?
Some of it from protein, yeah. So
part of what I want to do, too, as the company is really a little bit of education. You know, whenever you change anything in your life, you need a teacher, and a tribe to support you in a community. So part of bringing this to the world is just restructure that plate, and make sure there is a healthy piece of protein of high quality, lots of produce, and some healthy fat.
Right. So, which brings me to my next question is, how do you formulate your recipe, and do you use your children as test subjects?
I do indeed, and they get so tired of it, but they're such good little troopers. And actually, we did a road show to all the Whole Foods markets this past weekend where we did cooking demos, and I had all 3 of them help me. So they are on board with this brand. So the way we formulate is pretty much being inspired by the various flavors of the world. I've done some extensive travel when I was younger, and now it's obviously a little bit harder, but there's so many wonderful flavors in the world, whether it's Moroccan spices or the Japanese, the nori seaweed and the mushrooms, to the Mediterranean flavors. So when you gather those, not just spices, but the indigenous vegetables or the purees or anything that makes that flavor profile of that region in the world, and you combine them together, you can add it to anything to flavor something up. And, in our traditional Greek cooking, olive oil, lemon, and oregano is sort of standard. I mean, we put it on everything. I mean, even ice cream, believe it or not, we put olive oil on. So you take those spices and you add them to anything just to bring out that flavor of the region. So that's pretty much, I just look at kind of parts of the world and think what flavors are identified with that region, and bring them back and play with them until we find something that is both palatable, flavorful, and passes the 3-kid test.
Right. It must have been difficult to formulate the Mediterranean because there's so many different cuisine around the Mediterranean Sea.
You're right. And the funny thing is, I just last weekend went out and had some Mediterranean meatballs, and when I tried them, I tasted cumin or coriander and very Moroccan flavor. And I said, I pulled up the map and I said, wait, is that part of the Mediterranean? Why are those flavors in there? And you're right. I mean, you can incorporate all sorts of different flavors in the Mediterranean, but I really went with what was a little bit more Greek.
So you start from one end, you have Spain, then France, Italy, Greece, and then you go to Turkey. You keep on going around, and then you have Middle East, Israel, and all that. You go back to Africa, and then you have all the Moroccan, Algerian, and all that, which are Lebanon, and all these. These are all slightly different flavors, and it's fascinating to, I like to go out to different, what you would call ethnic restaurant and discover flavors like this. I recently found an Ethiopian restaurant, and I was pleasantly surprised how good and tasty. It was a purely vegan restaurant, but very, very full, and they make you eat with your hands. there's no fork, no fork, or no anything like this. So there's a lot of finger licking going on, but I love it when it's good. it's a discovery, And of course, in Morocco, you have the couscous with the lamb and so on and so forth. So there's plenty of flavors to choose from. Speaking of which, can you tell us about your new flavors coming up?
So what we have in development is a Moroccan lamb. So we did take the flavors of Morocco and put them into a lamb, which is just wonderful. I am also doing a seafood, wild-caught salmon patty with more of a southwestern flavor profile. And I'm also toying with, and this has to pass the test of the kids, but doing a grass-fed and finished beef with 20% or 15% liver. And I'll tell you, liver is just, so highly nutrient dense. Really? It's nutrient dense, but it is off-putting, I know.
My mother forced me to eat liver, and I hate liver to this day still.
No, me too, but I will tell you, it is a little off-putting and it is a little intimidating because a lot of people don't know how. They know it's good for you. We all know it's good for you, and there's been so much, out lately on the benefits of all the vitamins it contains, but they don't know how to cook it.
I know.
So I took grass-fed and finished pork, and I did a more Greek, like authentic Greek spice, and I added a little bit, I think like 10% ground liver. My kids could not tell. They love it. They're like, Mom, can we have that one again? So I thought, okay, if they can't tell there's a little liver in here, I'm going to be sneaky. So that might be one that we're going to play around with and see if there's a demand. I mean, I know coming from the paleo world and coming from the nutritional community, we know the benefits of that. And if I could, if we could present it in a way that's both flavorful and, desirable and easy to cook up, then we're going to give that a try.
Right. I have a question regarding that's just popped up in my mind right now. There was a Keto Conference in Austin, not this past weekend, the weekend before that. And I'm feeling there's a slight shift away from paleo into keto diet. Do you feel the same thing, or paleo is still very strong?
I think it is. I think it's still strong, but I think they're just incorporating it a little bit more just to mean real food. So it doesn't necessarily have to be paleo. It's just cooking and from real ingredients. And so, some people are looking at keto, but again, keto's not for everyone. And you have to know your why, and you have to know your goal. And, the kind of diet I prescribe to most of my clients is the diet that most works for you and that your body responds to. So I tried keto myself for a while, and, I became keto adapted, and I liked it for some benefits. And with my hormones and at the age I'm at, there were some side effects, which I wasn't happy with. So it's just constantly tinkering and finding what works for you. But I think it always should be at least 80% a real food diet. Whether you want to do the macros more keto, or you don't care about the macronutrients and you're fine with a paleo template, most of your nutritional values should come from real food. Right.
I am, as a nutritionist also, I am very big in favor of balanced diet. I'm not into extremes. When people tell me, oh, I'm doing the keto diet, I say, okay, but are you sure that's good for you? Is that really what will work for what you need? A friend of mine just told me recently she's on the keto diet. Now, her reason is because she has some, let's say, mood issues that she thinks that by increasing fat into a diet will improve brain function. And
I've heard that, right?
I'm talking about depression. And do you think that like a keto diet could help with depression, for example?
I definitely do. And the biggest studies they have done are on epilepsy, where it just calms the neurological effects happening in the brain. So I definitely feel like it can. And for me personally, I'll tell you what it did eliminate is some crazy carb cravings that all of a sudden came up when I never had them before. The keto diet just quieted all that. But being that it's not so balanced in its macronutrients, I feel like I suffered a little bit with such a low carb. So, I was thinking of doing some carb ups, but I think you're right, Alain. A balanced diet of just real food at the end of the day, the way I used to eat back when I was a kid in groups, is just the easiest and best. I mean, I'm such a busy mom right now. I don't have time to count all the macronutrients and weigh the food.
No.
I can't.
That's a waste of time. No, I'm my core diet is paleo, but I like, protein in reasonable amount. I'm not going to eat a pound steak. My average serving is 4 ounces, and I always have fresh greens, side greens, and fruits, and that's fine. I don't do grains. I don't do any of that. But Sometimes you see with people getting into diets, they go to extremes, they go to hardcore, and they feel that either they can hurt themselves or they're gonna be disappointed pretty fast, and then they're gonna go back to the old ways, which is worse. So
which is worse.
balance and variety, that's the thing. So go with nature, go with the season, buy what's available on the market. That will give you variety, fresh and variety constantly. And that's basically what I learned from my grandma.
Right, exactly. And for me, I encourage people to see how food affects them. And that's why the Whole30, I encourage people to maybe start with the Whole30, eliminating a few things that possibly irritate them. And a lot of people don't know how good they can feel until they remove the grains or the dairy, if dairy is an irritant. They have no idea until they remove it and say, wow, I don't have joint pain anymore. And for me, I just have the simple ring test. I have an amethyst ring that goes on my index finger. When that ring comes on and off easy, I know that I'm not retaining water, I'm not bloated, my joints don't hurt. So for every person, it's a different indicator, but I encourage everyone to find what is that indicator in you that food makes you either feel a certain way or enhances the inflammation or gives you that joint pain. So it is a process of just trying different foods and seeing how you react. And a lot of people haven't started the health journey to try all this yet, but I think it's important.
Right. What's interesting, because I'm French, you're from Greece, is that in Europe, we don't obsess about food the same way as they do in America. What's up with that?
We don't obsess about food. We don't even obsess about alcohol. I was 13 years old, 14, at a Greek tavern on the beach, and my parents are having beer, and, do you want to try a little? Sure. We're young kids. There was no taboo of like, oh, well, you're not 21. You shouldn't be having alcohol. It was, so by the time I got to be 21 at the legal drinking age, it was like, no big deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Just alcohol. If you wanted a little sip of wine with dinner, it's not we don't make it this forbidden thing. And food the same way. I think there's a lot more obsession with it here than than in Europe. And it's funny because every time I go to Greece, I naturally just drop 5 to 10 pounds. From the eating and the walking and the activities, and it's just naturally happening.
And you're not like constantly thinking about it. In Europe, typically, it's all about enjoying the food, and it's not about obsessing about the food.
Oh,
and if you take all the guilt out of it, then it's all about pleasure, eating good food, tasty, good food.
For us in Greece, and I think France is the same way, lunch is the biggest meal. And it could take upwards of 3 hours. Literally, to sit down, to prep it, to sit at a table with 25 of your cousins and relatives and enjoy a 3-hour meal in the summertime when you've got that time. But that is a pure pleasure. That is an enjoyment.
Yeah, and there's a whole, food is also has this whole social aspect to it that I found a little bit lacking in America. Most of my get-togethers are with foreign people. When I either invite people over or they invite me over, most of them are foreign. There's not a whole lot of Americans in there. They typically do not invite you to their home. If they do something, they do it at a restaurant, right?
Right.
Don't you find that a little strange?
Although I do, but we are big foodies and we love to cook at home. So
I understand.
In our environment. But I do see what you're saying. You're right. Yeah. And a lot of times, we're on the go. So how many meals are people having in their car alone, through the fast food? What happened to sitting down and nourishing yourself and enjoying your meal? And there's so much to be said about digestion too. If you're not taking the time to sit and take 20 minutes to eat that meal and make sure that plate looks nutrient dense, then you're just woofing food down and, you know.
And I think that's also, it's an issue I've been noticing is that people, the issue with fast food is not just fast food, it's fast eating. And when you eat too fast, not only you don't enjoy your food, you just gulp it down. You don't chew it well enough, so you don't start the proper digestive process, but you end up with a big stomach. Have you noticed how a lot of Americans have like big fat bellies? The body can be looking
the body's
normal,
skinny, but right.
right? But the belly is coming out, and we're not talking just about beer belly. We're talking about, and I believe firmly that it has to do with the fact that Americans, because they eat on the run and they eat fast and they don't take the time to, consciously eat, they just swallow the food and they dump into the stomach and let the stomach do all the hard work. And after years, the stomach goes bigger and bigger. We don't see that much of that in Europe in general, right? I mean, yes, there are people with big bellies, but not to the extent that I see around here.
Probably not to the extent, although sadly, my last trip to Greece was last summer, and there's a Starbucks and a McDonald's on every corner, so it's happening over there too.
And most of Europe is catching up, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. So back to business. How and where can we buy your patties?
Okay, so we are just distributed, and we just got a reorder to all the Whole Foods in the SoPac region, and that's Southern California, Hawaii, Arizona, and Nevada. We are also in a couple markets here in California called Lassen's and Irvine, as well as some small little grocery markets that are on our website. So you can go to our shop page. That website is tribalifoods.com. And we are also being sold online at The Simple Grocer and at healthygoodness.com.
Good.
And depending on when this airs, we will also be offering our product via our website on our shop page. But of course, you have to buy in bulk because shipping anything in a frozen cooler with dry ice is quite costly. So I encourage anyone, if they love the patties and they want to stock up, just buy them, stick them in the freezer. As a matter of fact, we had the funniest customer service call just the other day of an individual asking us the dimensions of the box because he wanted to make sure how many he could buy to stock his freezer. So we love calls like that. But we do have to sell them in a bulk just to justify the cost of shipping. You
should probably be represented in the Thrive market, right? You know about Thrive?
We've of course I do as well. And we have contacted them. I'm not sure they're doing frozen at the moment. So that's a whole nother, And part of, why I made it a frozen product is for that effortless and convenience aspect that you can just grab it out of the freezer and it cooks from frozen, so you don't need to defrost it. 5 to 6 minutes per side, depending on your cooking method. You could do it on the stovetop with a grill pan, in the broiler, or out on your barbecue. So I wanted it to be convenient for people because there are times, again, like I said, I'm a mom. There are times where I've meal prepped and planned or pulled out the slow cooker. But there are those days that, after soccer practice at 6:30, we're home and all three of them are looking at me saying, "What are we eating?" And I'm like, "Okay, let me grab some patties out of the freezer." So that convenience is huge for people like that.
I think that's a good selling point. And can you remind us information about your website, your Facebook, so on and so forth?
Right. So our handle is at Tribali Foods, and you can find that both on Instagram, on Facebook, and the website is tribalifoods.com.
Okay. Can you spell Tribali for us?
Yes, I think if I move, there's a blanket behind us. So it's Tribali and then foods with an S. Okay.
Great. Mark, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unusual name. Where did it come from? How did you come up with the garden?
Right. Okay. That's so. Like I said, I feel like every time you change something in your life, you need a teaching and a teacher and a tribe. You want to belong to something. You want to feel like you are a part of a community and a certain way and a protocol of the way you eat. And we all have tribes that we belong to, whether it's our family is our tribe, the last name we share, our religion, our sports, politics, anything can be, categorized as a tribe. And so I love that name, and just adding the little I and the accent at the end just felt a little worldly to me. So it's not Greek inspired, but it is worldly inspired. So Tribali Foods.
Excellent. So how long have you been trading then?
I'm sorry, how long have I been what?
How long has the company been trading?
Oh, it's been, we started a year ago. But for me, this has been probably a year and a half in the making. And with all the approvals through USDA with raw meat, you can imagine how long that took. It was quite a process. So the concept and the idea was formulated about a year and a half ago in my mind and in my passion, but it did take a while to get all that approval process and the packaging done and the facility and the sourcing. So we started last year.
Excellent. And I mean, you've already said you've got some new products coming. And while you were talking about them, it's the one thing I always find most upsetting about these programs. Alan's tried it. You know what it tastes like, but me stuck over in Europe, I'm just sitting here salivating, thinking, I bet that's nice.
I think we'll have to send you some, although I don't know, sending raw meat as a whole overseas. I tried to send some to Canada and it got caught up in customs and they just abandoned it. I said, okay, there's so much paperwork that was needed.
Yeah. Maybe
Alain, I think you need to come here.
Maybe
It sounds like
you should cook him for Mark and then send him to him.
Already cooked? That'd be a little cold by then, but.
So you've got these new 6 products coming out. In the back of your mind, are you thinking of going anywhere else, a different product range apart from patties?
Yes, excellent question. Yes, so now that I'm a meat eater, I am looking for other ways. So we're thinking meatballs. We are also thinking meatloaf, or even the 1 pound blocks, which I use a lot. I take that 1 pound block of say the Mediterranean patty, and I'll break it up in a cast iron skillet with sweet potatoes and maybe a fried egg and do like a hash sort of thing. So, there's so many different flavors you can play with, so many different high quality proteins, and again, so many different formulations that we could come out with. But we're really, I really want to be customer focused. So I want to hear what people like and what people are wanting. So if people feel that, yes, meatballs would be a great solution to my everyday busy life and my kids would love that, we'll come out with the meatballs. So it sort of depends on what the customer requests as well. So let me know if you have an idea.
I've always got ideas, me. I mean, you've given us a bit of the background of, why you started the business. What's the thing that makes you get up in the mornings now? What's the thing that most excites you about what you're doing?
Educating people on how to eat, and giving a product to them that'll both provide the nutrient density that's needed in your diet and also make life a lot easier. So that really excites me. It's just giving something back. I mean, making a stake in people's, no pun intended, in people's daily life, making a difference.
Oh, that's super. Well, you've given us a whole lot of brilliant information today. Thank you for that. Can you just remind us of your website again?
So yes, it's www.tribalifoods.com.
Super job. Alan,
Thank
back
you.
to you for the close.
Okay. Do you have anything you would like to add, Angela?
No, other than if you do try our patties, definitely get on our website, join our newsletter. We welcome feedback. We welcome constructive criticism. We want to deliver something that really meets the demand of what people are looking for. So we love hearing from you, and definitely follow us on Instagram to see all our latest. And we're out there just building our community, so be sure to join our tribe.
Great. Thank you again, Angela, for being on the Low Carb Paleo show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, yo.
Well, thank you for having me. And as we say in Greece, stini yasu.
Thank you. Yes, that sounds great.